Welcome back to the Menopause Movement Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Michelle Gordon. If you're watching the replay or on YouTube, thanks so much for being a part of the Menopause Movement. Today, we welcome Lisa Burnage to the podcast. A self-proclaimed midlife activist, Lisa is the creator of the School of Midlife. She's on a mission to make our middlescence, which is midlife plus adolescence, something we look forward to, embrace, and live consciously rather than dread, deny, and live mindlessly. She has 20 plus years experience as a corporate facilitator and an executive coach. She's an NLP master practitioner, a Myers-Briggs specialist, has a degree in European business, and is a laughter, yoga, and corporate mindfulness facilitator. During the podcast, we talk about the changes that brought her to create the School of Midlife. What is middlescence, really? The changes in her life that left her feeling lost and lonely through midlife and menopause, perimenopause anyway, getting out of the planned and perfect mindset, the importance of letting go when it comes to progress. What is the O.R.G.Y method? And it's not what you think. Getting out of silent suffering and the importance of reframing. Now, at the end of the episode, make sure you visit drmichellegordon.com/podcast, where you can find the show notes plus the links to the books and resources mentioned in the episode. And if you enjoy the episode, make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you're always the first to know when each episode is released. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. And thank you for all of the 5-star reviews. If you haven't left a review yet, please take the time to review the podcast. This helps more women to find it and get the help they need during the disruption of menopause. No one should have to go it alone. And thanks so much for being a part of the menopause movement. I'm so happy to have you here. And let's get to Lisa. So Lisa, welcome to the Menopause Movement Podcast. I'm so happy to have you.
Thank you very much.
You've created something called the School of Midlife. So let's talk a little bit about how that came about. What prompted it? What was your experience? That sort of thing.
Well, it was a very interesting situation, actually, because about 3.5 years ago, I decided I was going to go on my gap year. And then I can tell you a bit more about that later, than my oldest gap year. And people said, oh, you're going to write a blog about this. So I sort of said, well, yeah, okay. So I sort of started writing this blog, which was a play on words of Life Begins at 40. And I called it the blog Life Begins at O.R.G.Y, which it's an acronym.
Wait, the Life Begins at O.R.G.Y?
Yeah, but a play on words of Life Begins at 40. And the O.R.G.Y being an acronym that I came up with. So an oldies re-energizing gap year. Or maybe it could be an oldies rebooting gap year of your health and well-being, which is what you focus on.
Yeah.
Or it may be an oldies rebalancing gap year, which is rebalancing your hormones, things like that, right?
Okay.
So many, many different R's to the O.R.G.Y, but mine started off as re-energizing. But to come to the story of the School of Midlife it was actually during COVID lockdown. I was just sitting there just thinking this isn't going anywhere for me, and realized some resistance that I've had because I've been professionally for the past over 20 years, I've been in the corporate facilitation and consulting space. So I'm very used to dealing with adult learning, and I actually enjoy that part. I just didn't enjoy the corporate part. And I was trying to get away from it completely, really leave it and reinvent myself completely. And then I realized that actually, why don't I put this stuff online? And it was just like this COVID insight moment. And
right on.
That's how it came about.
So you've only been doing this since March?
No, I've been doing it since the idea was born, I think, end of May, June. Then I was kind of super focused on it for 2 months. And I've got my first cohort currently learning. And we're halfway through now. And I launched the first program mid-August.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So one of the things that I find in many women who come through my program, which, is there on the screen called the Minnow System, is that women start to really question their role, their place in society, and then kind of legacy and what they want to do, And so I see a lot of my ladies will go through the program, and then, 6-7 weeks in, now my program's a year long, but 6-7 weeks in, they're like, I don't want to do this job anymore. What's next? And sounds like that's something that you did too, where you just chose to take a really hard look at, yourself and your happiness and that sort of thing. So tell me, I guess the question that's kind of embedded in there is, how has your life changed since you've, chosen to kind of do a, 180?
I feel like I'm more me.
Okay.
That sounds a bit weird, maybe.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of doing what I'm enjoying doing. I gain a lot of energy from it rather than draining energy. The work doesn't feel like a chore. So I'm still doing some corporate work at the moment. And it could, because there's always this part of holding on and letting go, with the identity and that whole part, especially when you're starting up. So I feel that's more draining. But no, I just feel kind of more aligned and more in tune. And it might sound cheesy, but I really feel like I know what I want to do.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So you know what you want to do now. How did you come to that realization of, knowing that you needed to make a change?
Oh, crumbs. That was a long time ago, actually. So I guess it started about 10 years ago. At the time I was 43 and I wasn't very happy with my lot. I was like 15 kg more than I am now. I wasn't very happy with my work. It was like 2010, so just after the global financial crisis, and we just renovated a house. My dog died. There were many, many things going on. Also, my kids going into the teenage years.
Yeah.
And I wasn't very happy with my work because it had dropped off, and through the whole GFC thing, it made it very difficult to find new work. And so that was really the turning point. And unfortunately, your program wasn't around then, and I was feeling rather lost. Like I was going, "What's going on with me?" I Googled around because I just said, "I feel like I'm going insane." And then this website popped up, which was called Female Brain Gone Insane. I don't know if you've heard about it. No. It's a nurse, and she talks about the perimenopause. And I was like, what's the perimenopause? I don't consider myself an uneducated person, but at the age of 43, I'd never heard that word before. You had your period or there was the menopause, right?
Right.
And then it just made so much sense what she said. And she said, there are different types of ways that it impacts you, whether you're kind of the weepy sort or the hyper sort. And I was the weepy sort, drink gallons of alcohol, self-numb, medicate, and cry my eyes out when nobody was watching on the sofa.
Commercials, right?
Yeah.
Just the commercials, just like crying at the stupidest commercials or, Star Trek.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No, I get that. So it's really interesting because you mentioned that you were feeling lost and lonely. And this is a very, very common complaint in menopause.
Yeah.
I've surveyed thousands of women in menopause.
Yeah.
And, we've kind of segmented them out. But one of the big struggles is just feeling alone and feeling lost and lonely. And because menopause is not something that we talk about, and it's almost as if, here this big thing comes, this, we call it like the second puberty, right? It's a huge change.
Middlescence. Yeah. It's adolescence. Yeah.
Yeah. So here's this big change that's coming to our body that we have no education about. Now, when our bodies start to change in adolescence, of course, we have, education on that. And our bodies never change back, right? We're going to get breasts and we're going to become fertile and we're going to want to have sex and those sorts of things, right? And then our hormones start to decline, which is natural. And we maybe, some people really do lose their sex drive. That happens. And it's like this big secret society. And so that's why my program is called the Menno System. That's why we have the menopause movement, because we're trying to, a lot of women don't want to be associated with the word menopause, right? It's a negative connotation.
Yeah, it sounds like degeneration, right? But
right. Well, it isn't. It can be the best time of your life, and that's why we have the program. And the thing is that the reason I chose to not call it something else was because it's like, let's embrace it. Let's just see it as a change.
Totally.
And so you've got the School of Midlife. You've just started your first cohort. How's that going? How do you like it? I mean, other than feeling energized.
Yeah, it's going well. It's quite unusual because usually I'm standing in front of a group of people and interacting.
Yeah.
The remote learning is because you don't kind of get any instant feedback or confused faces, but the program is running, it's over 9 weeks. I'll be changing it to 8 weekly modules. So people get it dripped out a little bit at a time with different focuses each week. And there are 3 phone calls. So there are 3 group coaching calls, similar to what we're doing now today with a Zoom call.
Sure.
So we have our second one tomorrow, and that's quite good because I can kind of calibrate with people And I've also set up a community because, like you were saying about this whole topic about talking about it, that's why I've called it also the School of Midlife, let's give it its name. Or, as I said, the middlescence part, midlife and adolescence. The word has been around for quite some time, but people don't really use it. And I don't know about you, but for me, it sounds much more appealing to be a middlescent woman or a middlescent rather than a middle-aged woman.
I mean, it depends
sounds
on
a bit more. It sounds a bit more cool.
I don't know. I think it really just depends on your own definition. I mean, we can't turn back the clock.
No.
And if we're gonna, buy into the patriarchy, then we're gonna go and get Botox, and we're gonna get plastic surgery, and we're gonna do all those things.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know some men do that. A lot of men do that, but more women. Women are really obsessed with how they look because of the way that women are portrayed in the media.
Yeah.
So what if instead all we did was, work on accepting ourselves?
I think it's a tricky one, right? I mean, the interesting thing is on the program that I do, I don't talk so much about the things that you just mentioned. I talk more about the inner work because obviously if, as you said, there are all these social narratives out there, which we either consciously or unconsciously listen into and maybe adapt our style or how we look or how we act or whatever. And I think there is that thing that you were mentioning coming to the midlife is it's kind of a bit like, F it, I'm 40 or F it, I'm 50. Do you know what I mean? It's just like, I don't care anymore. And I've sort of got to that stage. There was a lot of fear, I have to say, in the past, particularly the past 3.5 years when I was trying to work out what it was I actually wanted to do with this whole thing. And, what will somebody think? Or I don't care anymore now. But I think that's also a phase that you go through. But coming back to your point about talking about it and making it calling it by its name, actually empowers women and also men too, because I mean, I think there's a lot of pressure on guys, for different reasons, right? But it empowers people then just to hold that space of where they are.
So not caring what people think. Can you expand on that a little bit more? Because, I think one thing that we're taught as women is that, we're supposed to ask for permission, and we're taught that from a very, very early age, right?
Yeah.
So how do we get from being somebody who asks for permission to somebody who doesn't care and will just do it?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like doesn't care sounds a bit kind of maybe negative, but
yeah, well, so
it's just a Nike, just do it, right?
Yeah, well, let's redefine then. So the biggest thing is not caring. When I say not caring, that doesn't mean not having responsibility. That means not caring about the reaction that others will have and taking risks. So how do you get there?
That was part of my oldies re-risking gap year. I think that was a large portion of it because the gap year isn't actually a year, it's a mindset, right? So the sooner you start, the better. I think it's test and learn. So I did a lot of work around this whole topic of transition. And I think as women, coming back to what you were saying about the asking permission, there's also a lot of narrative around having everything planned and perfect. And life isn't planned and perfect. And that's why I think we bash ourselves up a lot and say, oh, well, had I done this or had I done that? And then, then I'm not going to do anything. And then the fear sets in and a lot of rumination. So I think that's one thing. I don't know if the other thing is, and you're a medical doctor, so maybe it's relevant there. I also read, for example, that the amygdala functions differently with men and women, and that women tend to ruminate when they're kind of under stress and guys kind of go out and take action. So,
well, I mean, it's not just the amygdala. I mean, it's the full on endocrine system.
Yeah.
So,
the whole thing. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, it isn't, emotions, start there, but then it kind of moves on, and there are some women who, manage their feelings by taking action. I mean, I don't think that we can, basically say, I mean, women and men are not the same, but it's also, I mean, like I'm the type of person who will always take action, but I also went into a male dominated field. I'm a surgeon. Yeah. So it's hard to make generalizations. And that's why, when it comes to menopause, there's no one size fits all answer.
Totally. And I think, And so we're pretty much, help the same
audience, but I think we do it in different ways. So let's go into your O.R.G.Y method. So let's go a little bit deeper into what that means.
Yeah. Well, as I mentioned, it's kind of more of a mindset, right? So when I first started off the gap year, I actually wanted to work out, because gap year has this idea of being a student, right? You know, putting on your backpack, trekking around Southeast Asia for 3 months or whatever, carefree. And then obviously, you know, if you've got responsibilities and a job and a family, you can't necessarily do that. So how to create your gap moments or your gap year at home. And so it just started off, first of all, I went and signed up for a dance course. So like I was saying before, like taking action to just test and learn, because this plan and implementation, this whole idea about perfection, it's not there. I actually changed my mantra. I said, practice makes progress, not practice makes perfect, because there is no such thing as perfect. So having that.
One of my mentors likes to say, you don't have to get it perfect. You just have to get it going.
Yeah.
You know, and that's such a good, and
it's
one
an
of the
interesting
things,
way to say as a surgeon.
Yeah. Well, again, this is not, I mean, we have to be really very precise in surgery.
Yes. Yeah.
And, you know, when you're not precise, then people die. So it's a very different type of mindset when you're starting a business, say, you know, you don't have to get it perfect, but, you know, you just have to get it going. But I will say also, you know, going back to surgical residency, I wasn't perfect when I first started. I made plenty of mistakes. And I mean, the first time I held a knife, the knife slipped out, you know, it slipped and it went, I was like, it was like, and I, you know, that was, you know, 25 years ago or something. And I freaked out. And it was so great because the surgeon who was teaching me just said, control your knife. He didn't freak out. He didn't take the knife away from me. He didn't do anything. Just like, control your knife. And so that was a really good lesson for me. And, you know, as I've pivoted in my life, you know, here I am in midlife and completely pivoting, going from being a full-time surgeon. I had up to 5 surgeons working in my practice at one time, to now, you know, coaching, you know, hundreds and thousands of women online, you know, to understand that menopause is, you know, it can become and will become the best time of your life if you look at it in the right way.
Totally. Yeah.
And so it's been quite a pivot. And so moving from the mindset of perfectionism to the mindset of just get it going and perfect along the way. So it's been
test and learn.
Very different. Yeah. It's been a very, very different way of learning over the past, you know, 3-4 years as I've been doing this.
Yeah, that's really interesting you say that, because I think that whole thing about sort of it's also about the ability to let go and to say, look, I am just going to test and learn, right? Yeah. So I kind of give it the name, the old is releasing gap year. Release as in letting go, but release because a new lease of life, right? Or a new energy. So you've kind of got to let go in order to get that energy. That's really important. But you mentioned about the whole thing is, it's not rocket ship science. It's kind of based around that whole topic of the wheel of life, that we have different aspects of our life, our career, our health and well-being, finances, friends and family, relationships, personal growth, physical environment, and that sort of fun and giving back, those sort of 8 areas. And we kind of start off the program actually looking and saying, what is the R in your O.R.G.Y, right? Is it rekindling your relationships? Is it rebooting your health and well-being? Because everybody's different.
Sure.
So, for example, on the cohort that I have currently, I have someone whose the age range is between 38 and 53, because the 38-year-old says she wants to kind of work out before the proverbial hits the fan, right? Yeah. So very different life phases are coming up. So I think that coming back to the actual methodology is really looking at saying, where do I want to start? And just to give you an example, one of the women on the program said, I've got so many, I need to reorganize, I need to reboot. I said, so what's the low-hanging fruit? What's the thing, the one small thing that will make the biggest difference for you? Because I think, yes, again, coming back to that perfectionism, and we've got a big long list of all the things we have to do, we put a lot of pressure on that it's all got to happen with a magic wand all at the same time. So I think that was one of the mistakes that I made. I just said, okay, it's step by step. That was another new thing that I've introduced to myself, saying step by step, because it doesn't all happen perfectly at the beginning. You just take it one step at a time.
Right. I like to tell women that, you know, when you want to make a change in your life, it starts with experimentation.
Yes.
And then it has to be, if you really are trying to do behavior change, because, at the end of the day, I mean, what do we want, right? We want to be better. And how do we get better? We get better by changing our behavior.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so when it comes to actually creating the change or creating the life that you want, sometimes it's a matter of just taking the next step that is impossible to fail.
Yeah.
And making sure that you get those micro wins, because when you get the micro wins, then you get motivation, and motivation then will breed more action.
Yeah. It's the action to motivation
so,
to action. Yeah.
So the example I like to give is when I was struggling with exercise, and, I pay a coach. I have a coach and he assigns workouts, and I do them sometimes and sometimes I don't. And the only thing I have to do every day is put on my workout clothes, and that's it. And so I win. And of course, if I don't do the workout, I feel guilty and whatnot, but at the same time, if I'm winning, it's like, just, put on your sneakers.
That's what you need.
All you got to do is put on your
thing.
Trainers and So
it's the tiny habits. I don't know if you've read
of course,
the book
that book,
B.J. Fogg. Yeah, right. It's just
tiny
like
habits.
one little thing.
Atomic Habits is James Clear. So so we've got tiny. I've read Tiny Habits too.
Yeah.
So those are two books that we can recommend. Tiny Habits and Atomic Habits are both really very good books on behavior change.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so that's really what I just encourage people just to go and test and learn. I think the other thing is that people tend to feel, coming back to that plan and implement, it's also about testing out parallel paths. So it doesn't always have to be one way. You can try out different things. And often we think, oh, well, so-and-so did it this way, so I've got to do it that. Well, maybe it works a different way for you.
Again, it comes down to there's no one-size-fits-all answer.
There's no one-size-fits-all. Exactly.
Yeah, what's going to work for you? What works for you may not work for me. It's just how it is.
Yeah. But I think that, like you were saying, that whole topic about putting on your sneakers and the path, the steps, the regular steps really do make a big difference to making change. Yeah. And so that just wanted to say something about that, because I think there's also the topic for women a lot around that comfort zone. If you get outside your comfort zone, it feels scary. So I talk about re-expanding. That's the R in the O.R.G.Y, another one.
I like
re-expanding your comfort zone. So what you're doing actually, if you've sort of got, they always say the magic happens over here, right? And here you are in your comfort zone. But actually, this is where the magic happens. It's kind of that tiny little bit where you're living on the edge of your comfort zone. So you push it out and you expand it each time. And that's actually, for me, as you said, it may not work for somebody else, but for me, that really was very empowering. And I said, I'm actually re-expanding my comfort zone. I'm not living outside it at all. I'm just stretching it a little bit every day.
Yeah. There's also another way of looking at that. And that is, if you look at your life as a box, simple, right? You live in a box, your box is filled with beliefs. And then you want to make a change or you want to make an impact. Yeah. And that impact is going to happen outside your box.
Yeah.
And then you actually go there and you're uncomfortable and you're changing beliefs and, what you thought was real and isn't. And, this is the process of change. And then your box expands.
Yeah.
So you're saying this, I think we're saying the same thing, but then the next time it's like, you end up with, it's like, because what you thought was real wasn't real. I like to talk about the time when I was 5 years old when I decided that the only way I could make money was to be a doctor because of something my mom said. And so it was a subconscious order that I never even saw until I was 53 or 54 years old.
There you go.
And it was and I really thought the only way and so I would try to leave medicine. I didn't want to be in medicine. I tried to leave medicine and I couldn't make money. And it wasn't until I busted that belief.
Yeah.
It really broke it down that I was able to, step out of it and say, okay, I can make money other ways. And that's what I think is so great about midlife because, most of us are a little bit more financially secure by the time we, 40s and 50s. And so we have a little bit of time to sit back and say, what beliefs are driving my behavior? And how am I going to, is this really the life that I want or can I change it? And when I start to talk about the fact that we can create our lives, we can create anything because it all starts with thought. And once you understand that, then the world opens up. That's usually pretty mind blowing. And
Yeah.
that's a fun time during our program.
Yeah.
So, all right. So we talked, what does the O stand for?
Oldies.
Oldies. Okay. What does that mean?
Maybe that's the British in me. So I don't know if you've heard the expression a golden oldie.
Of course,
There
yeah.
is, like a record, right? Mm-hmm. So the oldie came really because I thought, okay, I am a student of life. We're all students of life, but
right.
I'm not the typical student. So I said, I'm going on an oldies gap year. That was actually, I was on a camper van trip on the Great Ocean Road in Australia when this idea came out. Yeah, I knew I wanted to do a gap year, but the idea for the O.R.G.Y. Yeah. And I said, yeah, but what's my focus going to be? I really need to kind of recharge my batteries. I'm going to be focusing on re-energizing. And I love playing. I'm a bit of a pedantic semantic. I love playing with words like O-R-G-Y. Okay, great. Yeah. I'm off on my orgy. And of course, it's a great dinner party conversation, right? And people really get into it. And the funny thing is then you ask them, so what is the R in your orgy? And they kind of go, you see some very dreamy faces. One woman looked at me and said, I really need to do, I want to do a rekindling with my husband. Or somebody else said, I really need to relocate, right? All different things.
Reassess,
reevaluate. So when I first started doing the list, I think there were over 300 re's, because re is about coming back to the analogy you had with adolescence. So my mission is really to make our middlescence, that's our midlife and adolescence, something that we look forward to, embrace, and live consciously, rather than dread, deny, and live mindlessly, because that's kind of what the social narrative tells us we have to do. And so kind of really defying that. So how can you best do that? And how can you embrace that? And I just wanted to pick up on what you said about, that re-expansion and about doing stuff and then realizing, wow, I can do this. Because I think a lot of it is also being mindful of people who are closest to you, typically are a little bit shocked. So, for example, research shows that for career changes in particular, but it can be any change, that the people closest to you are often the ones who are kind of like not necessarily as supportive as you would expect them to be. And you need to find your support, your diverse network, your support network in other places than you've had it before if you want to go through those bigger changes.
Yeah, that's really good. I mean, and the one thing I think that we can do when we start to become more aware, more self-reflective, start paying attention to awareness, is that, we can, ask the universe to bring us people that will help us become better. That's what I love. I mean, so for me, it's been such a big time of reflection and rekindling, my own relationship with myself that had been a bit fractured. So it's been pretty good. Okay. So we've gotten to the O and the R. What's the G?
Gap. The gap.
The gap. Okay. So that's the gap year.
Yeah.
So we don't have that. I mean, we don't call it a gap year in the US. So I guess
sabbatical.
A sabbatical. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, the gap year, it came around, I think that was sort of in Europe from students taking a year off between university, either or after university, so that gap year in education. So that's where it came from, that whole topic of gap year. Yeah.
Okay.
O.R.G.Y just sounds better than a sabbatical, but that's my opinion.
It's provocative, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, but it's always ongoing. So it's not one thing. So the thing about a sabbatical is I'm going on a sabbatical, finished, beginning, end, right? So somebody once asked me, so, you're on a gap year, when are you finishing? And then I really had this thought and said, well, I'm not actually, I'm still continuing. So it started off as re-energizing, then it went into reorganizing, then it went into revamping my surroundings, then it went into reconnecting with friends and repartnering with new business partners, all different sorts of things. So it's always ongoing. And coming back to your point about awareness, being aware of what do I need to be asking the universe for now, right? To be able to grow and develop, right? And that's that whole, and doing it with humor and compassion. So my take is always, you've got to be compassionate with yourself. I think we bash in, the self-bashing syndrome. I don't think that's the medical term for it, but it's quite rife. and self-compassionate. So that's also on the program, the Midlife Rocks program. Part of that begins with how kind are you to yourself, and how can you be more kind to yourself? How do we look at aging? Because, research shows that if we have a positive attitude towards aging, we live on average 7.5 years longer than people have a negative attitude, right? And we probably have a bit more fun on the way.
I have to say, it really bothers me. I mean, and this is just me, right? This is how I think, but it's like, I'm going to be 56 years old next month. And, by the time your podcast airs, I'll probably will have had my birthday. I'm like, okay, I'm going to be 56. That's great. I mean, it's just like time passes. There's nothing you can do about it. My best friend, Dion, who passed away in 2004 and in her 30s, she said that to me once when I was telling her that I wanted to go back to school. And this was way back before I even went to undergrad. And I started medical school at 31. She said, the time is going to pass anyway. So if you want to go to school, take out a loan and go.
Yeah.
You may as well pass the time doing what you want to do. And so, here I am now, 30 years later, whatever, 25 years later, saying, it's okay. The time is going to pass. And I can't stop gravity. I can't stop aging. I'm going to be, my face is going to sag. I might gain a little weight. And, if I can't love myself through all of this, then how can I be good for anybody else? Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the whole thing. And so self-acceptance.
So the reloving. Always reloving gap here. Self-love too. Yeah.
Self-love is important. I mean, and I think, just through growing up, through the media, through everything else, I mean, we just get this voice that just tells us we are so awful. And it's a matter of understanding that voice is not who we are. It's just a voice.
The little critical voice. Exactly.
Oh, yeah. So, all right. So what's the why?
The why is the year.
Oh, okay.
Which is actually not really a year, right? As I mentioned,
rest of your life.
So you can, this sounds a bit vulgar, but it's all totally clean. You can have multiple orgies if you start early enough, during midlife.
Well, yeah. I just had a podcast with a sex therapist. Now we've got the O.R.G.Y method with you. So one of the most popular episodes is the power of pleasure. The power of the female orgasm.
Well, there you go. The oldies re-pleasuring gap here.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, that's great.
A big one. Yeah.
What do you think? What do you see happening for you in the next 5 years or so?
That sounds like a real interview question. I really don't know, because I think, I'll be very frank, I think in the current climate and situation, coming back to the plan and implement that I mentioned, I think I will be doing a lot more testing and learning. Whether I'll still be in Singapore, probably not. I will probably be doing, it's funny, I have a friend who's very, very spiritual, and she said to me, "Hey, Lisa, you've got exactly the right name for what you're doing." And I said, "What do you mean?" I never think about it, although I like words. And she said, "Well, your name is Burnage."
I love it. That's great.
And I said, actually, it's Burnageism, right? Because as you said, age is age, right? But it's ageism, also how we look at ourselves, as I call it. Actually, this module that's coming out this week in the Midlife Rocks program is called Reframing. How do you reframe how you see your midlife self? And because, the whole topic about midlife is there was a great quote I read from the Pew Research Center who said, midlife is like Peter Pan's Never Never Land. It's the land that you never ever want to enter. It's the land that you never ever want to leave. So, midlife gets stretched to like 35 to 75,
Yeah, that's true. And it's interesting because that there are women who are in their late 60s to early 70s in my program who are getting a lot out of it. And there's women in their 30s, who want to who are saying, I want to know what's going to happen to me. And so this is why I'm here. So
I think the education is really important, actually. And I actually see this, a lot of people who are attracted to the program are people in their late 30s to mid 40s, because they're kind of in that sticky wicket situation. And I said, I was kind of going up and down for like 6 years. And then, for the past 3.5 years. So basically everything that's kind of happened over my last 10 years is compressed. I'm kind of putting it in there to try and help. And I think if people, so I see it also as a kind of a giving back to the younger generations, because as you said earlier on, this topic is not discussed. It's kind of put it in the cupboard. But if you can get it out, I have a friend in his late 30s, and he said, wow, you make midlife sound like real fun. I feel like I'm missing out. I said, well, that's good, because if that's the case, as I said, my slogan is, how to make midlife suck less and rock more. I mean, it's not going to not suck at all, right? Because life sucks every now and again, right? But you can make it rock more while you're going along.
Yeah, no, I like that. So I think it's really important, you talk about reframing, and then you talk about the fun of midlife. And, again, like I said, most of us we've put together enough money that we can maybe do some traveling, obviously not in a pandemic. But, I've been able to, since I started midlife, I would say 45 or so. We've traveled all over the world. We've been to I've been to all 7 continents, and I haven't gotten my wife to Australia yet. But once we get her to Australia, then we will have made it to all 7 continents. It's been a really great ride for us because we've been able to stop and look and see and discover new hobbies. I really enjoy photography. And so, one of the things I started doing was playing around with cameras. And, you can kind of see, look, I've changed my camera here. You can't see the background much. It's all, it's all blurry. And, so just understanding how all that works has been really fun for me. And getting
rediscovering.
Rediscovering. Yeah.
There you go. It gets I'm a very boring person. I just talk about Rhea the whole time.
I think Rhea's, what I love about your program.
Coming again, right?
What I love about your program is the R is the anchor.
Yes.
And when you change that R, there's just so many possibilities that can happen. And that's so awesome.
It's more as it's looking at regeneration rather than degeneration. There's another one, regenerating, right?
Yeah. You can get yourself younger. You can get yourself younger just by thinking younger.
Yeah. Is all in the mind. And I think it's also standing to your age, right? I don't go, I'm 50. I say I'm 53, it's okay, or I say, if I'm being sneaky, people say, so how old are you? And I say, I was born in the summer of love. And then everyone's going to go, and then you see who's good at history.
What is that, 68?
67. Haight Ashbury.
Yeah, I've been to Haight Ashbury, but I didn't know it was 67.
Yeah, I wasn't born on the crossroads there, but I was born in that summer when San Francisco and Flowers in Your Hair was in the charts. Yeah.
Yes, of course. So you call yourself a midlife activist.
Yeah.
So what is that?
A midlife activist, but it's kind of a bit of a self-proclaimed thing. I do like to get on my soapbox and talk about it, like we're talking about it now.
Yeah.
I think activists sometimes has this feeling of going out and doing something bad. Somebody did say to me, actually, Lisa, I don't think you're really a midlife activist. I said, so what am I? And they said, you're a midlife badass. I was like, I kind of quite like that. I might put that next in my LinkedIn profile. It was literally this week, right? And so I said, maybe I just change that in my LinkedIn profile and just put midlife balance. But it's really about active in the sense of talking about it and not making it some kind, like you're saying, a closet topic. And for example, the whole topic of perimenopause. In fact, this evening I was just with some friends. We had a picnic on the beach here, and we were talking exactly about this topic. A couple of them are in their early 40s, and have an open conversation about it. I think that's so important, that people don't feel, as you said, alone, because otherwise that's the other reason that there's this silent suffering. And I think that the statistics out there, and coming back to the activism question, I'm sorry, I'm not digressing. I am answering your question, I hope. But, this whole topic around depression, for example, the topic, as I call it, the R in the orgy that you don't want is renumbing. Copious amounts of alcohol, social media consumption, the whole thing, all these things to kind of self-medicate. And so I think, this whole topic about depression out there, that women in particular, if you look at the curve, the U-shaped curve of happiness, of life happiness, it tends to be lowest in our 40s. And for women, I was reading some research. They said that, for example, women in their 40s are often, or are one of the groups who are the highest takers of antidepressants.
Wow. And we know,
I don't know if that's in the US, but just generally speaking.
I mean, we know that antidepressants are, they can help, but what happens more is like looking hard at your life.
Exactly. Yeah.
Radical responsibility.
Yeah. I read a very interesting a book called Lost Connections. I don't know if you've heard of that, from Johann Hari. He also did a TED talk, and he suffered from suffers from depression himself. And he talks about, the clinical depression that does exist, that there are 9 different types or different reasons, disconnecting reasons for depression, 2 of which are biological. And the others are to do with, as you said, kind of feeling connected with our work, feeling connected with the people around us, feeling connected with the world and the universe and the nature and things like that. And there is a lot of disconnection going on. Yeah. So I also talk about reconnecting with yourself, I think is really important around that topic. So bringing up coming to the activist question, sorry, I kind of went around the bend there, to really, maybe bring up the topics as you do, which are kind of a little bit taboo.
Right. Yeah, a lot of taboo subjects.
Yeah.
People don't want to talk about, and I try to get in your face with that. That's just me.
Same here. I try and do it with humor.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I do too. During one of my live programs, somebody said, "I've never seen somebody so happy." I'm always smiling, as though I really love teaching live, and so I have a good time with that. What are you reading right now?
I am reading, I've got a couple of things. One about In Our Prime, Patricia Cohen. That's quite a nice one. That's about midlife. And a little bit about the history too, which is quite interesting, about how midlife came about. And it was really in the late 1800s, early 1900s, 1920s, when this whole thing about nobody bothered about getting old before then. It just kind of happened, and we used to all hang out together. And then this kind of age segregation came into place, which then started the youth habits. That's very interesting. And industrialization meant that older men were worried about being made redundant because they couldn't do the physical labor jobs anymore. So that's an interesting one.
Well, that's interesting, but I think we also have to look at the cult of youth from, back in Rome.
Oh, yeah.
You don't want to forget that. I mean, look at in ancient Greece and Rome, there was, the cult of youth, and that's, Michelangelo's David. All those, beautiful young men, all about beautiful young men, the cult of youth. So, all right, what else? What else are you reading?
Oh, I just finished reading that B.J. Fogg, The Tiny Habits. I quite like that one.
It's a good book. Yeah.
And another one, which is kind of more of a novel from Caitlin Moran. She's an English lady. She's got a very wicked sense of humor. A friend of mine, a British friend of mine, introduced me to her. She's got a very funny take on midlife. In fact, she's just got a new book come out, which I haven't been able to get. But her most recent, her older one is called How to Be a Woman. So she wrote that when she was 35. And then she wrote this one when she was in her mid-40s. So there's a very different take.
Yeah. That's great. So where can people find you?
All they need to do is to look up the School of Midlife. So that's so I'm on Instagram, the School of Mid.life, and the School of Mid.life on the web, and also on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm not on Facebook. I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. I have a very disparate relationship to Facebook. Let's see whether that will change. But I
know, the Facebook has, has our people are there, but Facebook audience is averages over 40 years old now.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, my daughter's going to take over my social media accounts.
Yeah, that's good.
Next month, so she's working on my strategy.
I love it. All right. Well, thanks so much for being a part of the menopause movement today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for.
It's been great.
Thank you very much for inviting me along, Dr. Michelle. I really appreciate the conversation. Good fun.
Did you know that menopause is not a medical condition? Most doctors don't know this either. I like to say that menopause is the privilege of a long life, and to really take hold of our lives in menopause, we have to unlearn what society and the medical establishment has told us about menopause. This is why I've created this brand new course called Understanding Your Hormones and Managing Your Menopause. I want to show you how you can get on top of your menopause right now so that you can start to see it as the best time of your life. Now, this course is valued at $500 and is in the beta testing phase. And we're currently accepting applications for women to test it out for us at no charge in exchange for feedback and testimonials. But the best part is, because you're a podcast listener, you can bypass the application process and go straight to the front of the line. To register right now, simply visit menopausemovement.com/hormones, and we can get started together right now. Remember, you can get started right now at no charge to you in exchange for feedback and testimonials when you go to menopausemovement.com/hormones. And I'll see you inside the course. Thanks so much for being a part of the menopause movement.